The sun-scorched plains of Wyoming Territory stretched endlessly toward the horizon as Cora Dawson stared down the barrel of a gun, her once pristine blue dress now tattered and stained with blood that wasn't her own. The year was 1876, and she had nothing left to lose. "Kill me fast," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes locked with the stranger who held her life in his hands. The cowboy's weathered face betrayed a flicker of surprise. He lowered his gun and lifted her into his arms with unexpected gentleness. His shoulders were broad beneath a dust-covered coat, and despite her circumstances, Cora noticed the clean scent of his skin beneath the trail dust. "You're hurt," he said simply, carrying her toward his horse. "And I ain't in the business of killing women, no matter what you've done." Cora fought to stay conscious as he placed her carefully on his horse. "You don't understand," she murmured. "They'll find me." "Name's Yates Yancy," he said, ignoring her protest, "and whoever they are, they'll have to go through me first." She tried to respond, but darkness consumed her vision as the blood loss and exhaustion finally claimed her consciousness. When Cora awoke, she found herself in an unfamiliar cabin. A small fire crackled in a stone hearth, and rough-hewn log walls surrounded her. She lay on a narrow bed covered with a patchwork quilt that smelled of pine and smoke. Her wounds had been cleaned and bandaged, and someone had changed her bloody dress for a man's shirt that hung loose on her frame. Panic surged through her as she tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her side where a bullet had grazed her ribs. "Easy now," came a deep voice from across the room. The cowboy Yates sat in a chair by the fire, cleaning a revolver. "You've been out nearly 2 days." "2 days," Cora gasped, struggling to rise despite the pain. "I need to go now." Yates set down his gun and crossed to her bedside in 3 long strides. "You ain't going nowhere with that wound, miss." "Cora," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Cora Dawson. Miss Dawson," he continued, "you're safe here. This is my homestead. 10 miles from the nearest neighbor and 20 from town." "No place is safe enough," she whispered. Yates pulled a chair to her bedside and sat, his brown eyes studying her face. His features were handsome in a rugged way, high cheekbones, a strong jaw covered in stubble, and lines at the corners of his eyes that hinted at both laughter and hardship. "I found you half dead in Hollow Creek. You were shot. Your dress suggests you ain't from around these parts, and you asked me to kill you rather than let whoever's after you find you." He leaned forward. "I think you owe me an explanation, Miss Dawson." Cora closed her eyes. She'd spent too long running, too long hiding. Perhaps it was time to trust someone even if it meant putting him in danger too. "I worked as a governess for the Harrington family in Denver," she began. "Victor Harrington is a banker with powerful connections. His wife died years ago, leaving him with 2 children I was hired to care for." She paused, gathering her strength. "Victor took a special interest in me. When I refused his advances, he became dangerous. Then I discovered ledgers in his office records of money laundering, bribes to officials, connections to organized crime. He caught me looking." Her voice broke. "He tried to kill me that night. I escaped with proof of his crimes, but his men have been hunting me for weeks." Yates's face darkened. "And you ran all the way to Wyoming Territory?" "I was trying to reach my cousin in Montana. She's all the family I have left." Cora watched his face for signs of disbelief, but found none. Instead, a resolve settled in his features. "Well, Miss Dawson, you picked a good place to get yourself shot. I was a doctor during the war." "You're a doctor?" Cora asked, surprised. Was he corrected? "Now I'm just a man trying to make a living off the land." Something passed behind his eyes, a shadow of memory he seemed unwilling to share. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. Yates stood and moved back to the fire. "Because you needed helping. Rest now. We'll figure out our next move when you're stronger." Over the next several days, Cora regained her strength. Yates proved to be a skilled healer, changing her bandages with gentle hands that belied his rough exterior. He rarely spoke of himself, deflecting questions with practiced ease, but Cora learned he'd come west after the war, seeking solitude and a fresh start. The cabin was simple but comfortable, a main room with the hearth, a small kitchen area, the bed where she recovered, and a loft where Yates slept. Outside stood a barn housing his horses and a few cattle, a vegetable garden and endless rolling plains. On her 5th day at the homestead, Cora insisted on helping with chores. Despite Yates's protests, she began preparing meals, sweeping the wooden floors, and mending clothes. The domestic rhythm provided a strange comfort after weeks on the run. "You never did say where you learned doctoring," Cora remarked one evening as they shared a simple supper of rabbit stew. Yates continued eating for a moment before responding. "University of Pennsylvania before the war. Served as a field surgeon with the Union Army. What brought you to Wyoming?" "Too many ghosts back east," he said simply. "Out here a man can live by his own rules. And die by them too," Cora added softly. Yates's mouth quirked into a rare smile. "That's the truth of it." That night, Cora awoke to the sound of thrashing. Yates was in the throes of a nightmare, his voice rising in distress from the loft. Without thinking, she climbed the ladder to find him tangled in his blankets, sweat glistening on his brow as he fought invisible demons. "Yates," she whispered, touching his shoulder. "Yates, wake up." He jerked awake, eyes wild, hand automatically reaching for his gun before recognition dawned. "Cora, you were having a nightmare," she explained, suddenly aware of the impropriety of her presence in his sleeping quarters. Yates sat up, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you. The war?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Some nights are worse than others." Cora sat on the edge of his bed. "My father had similar dreams after he returned from the Mexican War." He said talking about them helped. "Not much to say. I saw too many young men die, tried to save them with too little medicine and too much whiskey for anesthesia." His voice was raw. "After a while, you start to wonder if you're healing or just prolonging the inevitable." Cora took his hand in hers. His palm was calloused but warm. "Is that why you stopped practicing medicine?" "Partly." Yates stared at their joined hands. "Last patient I lost was my wife, childbed fever. I couldn't save her or our son." "I'm so sorry," Cora whispered. "It was 5 years ago. I came west afterward, started over." Their eyes met in the dim light, and something shifted between them, a recognition of shared loss, of pain survived. "You should go back to bed," Yates said finally. "Your side needs rest to heal properly." Cora nodded and descended the ladder, but sleep eluded her for hours afterward. The following day brought an unexpected development. As Cora hung laundry on the line, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Riders were approaching. "Yates," she called urgently. He emerged from the barn, saw the approaching party, and quickly ushered her inside. "Stay here," he commanded, retrieving his rifle from above the door. "What if it's Harrington's men?" Panic edged her voice. "Then I'll handle it." His tone left no room for argument. "There's a trapdoor under the rug by the hearth. Root cellar below. If there's trouble, you hide there." Cora watched anxiously through the window as 3 riders approached. Yates stood on the porch, rifle held casually but ready. To her relief, the men stopped a respectful distance away. "Afternoon, Yancy," called the lead rider, an older man with a silver star pinned to his vest. "Been a while since you came to town." "Sheriff Burke," Yates acknowledged. "What brings you out this way?" "Looking for a woman," the sheriff replied, and Cora's heart nearly stopped. "Telegram came through from Denver. Banker's governess stole some valuable papers and money. Dangerous, they say, might be wounded." "Haven't seen any strangers," Yates replied evenly. "Been keeping to myself as usual." The sheriff dismounted and approached, lowering his voice, though Cora could still hear through the cracked window. "Thing is, Yancy, Marshall in Denver mentioned this banker's mighty connected with some unsavory types. Reading between the lines, I'm thinking this woman might be running for good reason." Yates's posture remained unchanged. "That's so. Just saying, if you happened across such a woman, might be worth hearing her side before turning her in." The sheriff glanced toward the cabin. "Also might mention that I'm retiring end of the month. My replacement is young, eager to impress, might not be as." Understanding. Cora held her breath as the two men regarded each other. I'll keep that in mind, Yates said finally. You and your deputies want coffee before you ride back. Nah, got other homesteads to check. Take care, doctor. After the riders disappeared, Yates returned to the cabin. Cora stood trembling in the center of the room. They're looking for me, she whispered. Sheriff Burke's a good man, Yates said, setting his rifle aside. He was giving me a warning, not making threats. I'm putting you in danger by staying here. Yates approached her slowly, as one might a skittish horse. Let me see those papers you took from Harrington. Cora hesitated, then reached beneath the mattress where she'd hidden the documents. She handed him a packet of papers wrapped in oilskin. Yates examined them carefully, his expression growing darker with each page. Bank transfers to known criminals, payoffs to judges, evidence of falsified loans. This man's built an empire on corruption. And murder, Cora added quietly. The last page lists names, people who crossed him and disappeared. Yates looked up sharply. You're right to run, but these papers, they're your protection and your danger. In the right hands, they could bring Harrington down. But whose hands are right? He has connections everywhere. Yates was quiet for a long moment. I know someone, federal marshal in Cheyenne, man I served with in the war. He's honest and he has the authority to act on this. You'd help me get these to him. I'd do more than that, Cora. I'd make sure you're safe until Harrington is behind bars. Their eyes met, and Cora felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. In that moment, she realized just how much she'd come to trust this quiet, haunted man who'd saved her life. Why would you risk so much for me? She asked softly. Yates stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Because in all my years of running from the past, you're the first thing that's made me want to stand and fight for a future. His words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Before Cora could respond, Yates turned away. We'll leave for Cheyenne tomorrow at first light. It's a 3-day ride. You should rest while you can. That night, as Cora prepared for bed, a commotion outside drew her attention. She peered through the window to see Yates confronting a stranger on horseback, a well-dressed man whose posture spoke of city living rather than frontier hardship. She cracked the window to hear their conversation. $500 for information leading to her capture, the stranger was saying. Mr. Harrington is a generous man to those who help him. And to those who cross him, Yates asked coldly. The man smiled thinly. I wouldn't know. No one crosses Mr. Harrington twice. I'll keep that in mind if I see any governess fitting that description. The stranger produced a photograph and handed it to Yates. Pretty thing, isn't she? Shame about her unfortunate tendencies toward theft and hysteria. Cora's stomach turned as she recognized the man's voice. Martin Reynolds, Harrington's personal secretary and sometimes enforcer. I'll be staying in town at the hotel, Reynolds continued, should you come across any information. After he departed, Yates entered the cabin, his face grim. Without a word, he handed Cora the photograph, a portrait taken during her employment with the Harringtons. He'll be watching the trails to Cheyenne, Cora said, her voice shaking. We'll never make it. We will, Yates assured her, but not by the main road. There's another way harder through the mountains, but Reynolds and his kind won't know it. You still want to help me, even knowing they're this close? Yates took her hands in his. Especially knowing that. He hesitated, then added, Cora, in the short time you've been here, something's changed. I've changed. For years, I've been half alive, just existing. You've reminded me there are still things worth fighting for. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as Yates pulled her closer, careful of her injured side. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. Cora touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. I never expected to find you, she whispered. Not out here, not like this. Nor I you, he replied. But now that I have, I aim to keep you safe. They departed before dawn, traveling light with only what they could carry on 2 horses. Yates led them north at first, away from the direct route to Cheyenne, before turning west into rugged terrain that few travelers would choose. The journey was difficult. Cora's wound, though healing, pained her with each mile. They traveled by day and camped in hidden places by night, always alert for pursuers. Yates proved to be an expert woodsman, finding game for their meals and secure shelters when the weather turned against them. On the second night, huddled beneath an overhanging rock as rain pounded the earth around them, Cora voiced the fear that had been growing since they left the cabin. What if we make it to Cheyenne, deliver the evidence, and it's not enough? What if Harrington's influence reaches even there? Yates stoked their small fire. Then we keep going, Montana, California, even Canada if need be. Cora asked, the word full of hope and question. Yates met her gaze across the flames. If you'll have me, I know I'm not much, just a broken doctor turned rancher, but I love you, Cora Dawson. Probably have since I found you half dead by that creek. Tears welled in Cora's eyes. I love you too, though God knows it makes no sense after so short a time. Some things don't need time, Yates said, moving to sit beside her, just recognition. They slept curled together that night, finding warmth and comfort in each other's arms as the storm raged outside. The third day brought clear skies but new dangers. As they crossed a high mountain pass, Yates suddenly reined in his horse, signaling for silence. In the distance, riders were visible, at least 4 of them, moving purposefully along the valley below. Reynolds, Cora whispered. He must have guessed our route. Or hired a local tracker, Yates agreed grimly. We need to move faster. They pushed hard through the afternoon, taking dangerous shortcuts down steep slopes and through dense pine forests. By evening, they could see Cheyenne in the distance, its buildings a promise of civilization and potential safety. We'll reach town by midnight if we keep this pace, Yates said as they paused to rest the horses, but fate had other plans. As they descended the final slopes toward the plains surrounding Cheyenne, a shot rang out. Yates's horse reared, nearly throwing him as a bullet struck the ground at their feet. Run, he shouted, drawing his revolver. Head for town, not without you, Cora cried, but another shot, closer this time, decided for them. Yates slapped her horse's flank, sending it galloping forward as he turned to face their pursuers. Cora looked back to see him taking cover behind rocks, returning fire as 3 riders emerged from the trees. Heart pounding, she urged her horse toward Cheyenne, the precious documents secure in her saddlebag. The sound of gunfire faded behind her, and tears streamed down her face as she prayed Yates would survive. The lights of Cheyenne grew larger as she approached. She'd nearly reached the outskirts when a rider cut across her path. Martin Reynolds, his face twisted with triumph. Miss Dawson, he said coldly, aiming a pistol at her chest. Your cowboy friend won't be joining us, I'm afraid. Cora's blood turned to ice. What have you done to him? Nothing he didn't bring on himself, Reynolds replied. Now the documents, if you please. Cora straightened in the saddle, mind racing. If Yates was dead, she would ensure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. The papers are hidden, she lied. Kill me and you'll never find them. Reynolds's smile faltered slightly. Mr. Harrington would prefer you alive, but he'll settle for your corpse and his property. Then you'll have to kill me, Cora said, her voice steady despite her terror. Reynolds cocked his pistol. As you wish. A shot cracked through the night air and Reynolds jerked in his saddle. Blood blossomed on his shoulder as he struggled to keep his seat. A second shot sent him tumbling to the ground. Cora whirled to see Yates riding hard toward her, rifle in hand. His face was bloodied and he rode awkwardly, but he was gloriously alive. Yates, she cried, spurring her horse toward him. Are you hurt? He demanded as they reached each other. No, but you nothing serious, he assured her, though the grimace that accompanied his words suggested otherwise. Reynolds's men weren't expecting resistance. 2 are dead, 1 ran. And Reynolds, Yates glanced at the man writhing on the ground. He'll live to stand trial if I didn't hit anything vital. They rode into Cheyenne together, heading straight for the federal marshal's office. Despite the late hour, lights burned in the windows. Marshal James Thornton was a bear of a man with a thick beard and penetrating eyes. He listened to their story in silence, examining the documents with growing anger. "I've been building a case against Harrington for months," he finally said, "but could never get enough evidence to move against someone so powerful. These papers change everything. Will they be enough?" Cora asked anxiously. Thornton nodded grimly. "More than enough. I'll wire the federal prosecutor in Denver tonight. By this time tomorrow, Victor Harrington will be in custody." True to his word, Thornton arranged for Harrington's arrest the following day. Telegrams arrived confirming the banker was in federal custody, along with several of his associates. The evidence Cora had risked her life to deliver had exposed a criminal network spanning 3 states. Yates's wounds, a bullet grazed to his side and another that had broken his collarbone, required medical attention. As the town doctor tended to him, Cora held his hand, unwilling to let him out of her sight. "What happens now?" she asked as they settled into a hotel room that evening, Yates's arm in a sling and his face pale from pain and exhaustion. "That depends on you," he replied. "The marshal says you'll need to testify at Harrington's trial, but that's months away. After that, you're free to go anywhere, do anything." Cora sat beside him on the bed, taking his good hand in hers. "What if where I want to go is back to a certain homestead in Wyoming Territory?" Hope lit Yates's tired eyes. "It's not much compared to city living." "It's everything," Cora said softly. "It's where I found you." 6 months later, as autumn painted the Wyoming plains in gold and amber, Cora Dawson became Cora Yancey in a small ceremony at their homestead. Sheriff Burke, now retired, stood as witness alongside Marshal Thornton, who brought news that Victor Harrington had been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The cabin had changed in the months since their return. Cora had added curtains to the windows, planted flowers beside the porch, and convinced Yates to build an addition that would serve as both a proper bedroom and, eventually, a nursery. Most significantly, a shingle now hung beside the door. Dr. Yates Yancy, physician. At Cora's urging, Yates had begun practicing medicine again, serving the scattered homesteads and ranches within riding distance. The nightmares still came occasionally, but less frequently as months passed. On their wedding night, as they lay together in their new bedroom, Cora traced the scar on Yates's shoulder, a permanent reminder of the day he'd saved her life. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Finding me that day by the creek," Yates pulled her closer. "Only one regret," he murmured against her hair. "What's that?" "That you had to ask me to kill you before I found the courage to truly live again." Cora lifted her face to his. "Then I'm glad I did." Their kiss sealed a promise that had begun in the most unlikely of circumstances, when a desperate woman asked for death and found love instead. As years passed, the Yancey homestead grew into a prosperous ranch. 2 children joined their family, a son named Thomas and a daughter named Alina, both with their father's dark hair and their mother's determined spirit. Yates's medical practice flourished, and Cora opened a small school for the children of neighboring ranches. They never forgot how their story began with a gunshot, a plea for mercy, and an act of compassion that changed both their lives forever. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, they would sit on their porch watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky, marveling at how love could bloom in the harshest of wildernesses, between 2 souls who had lost everything before finding each other. In a land where survival often depended on how fast you could draw a gun, they had discovered that the greatest strength came from knowing when to lower it and open your arms instead.